Um, so I just would like to welcome Prof. Johan Steyn to this webinar and thank you, Johan, very much for sharing your knowledge and insights on this topic. I know it's quite it's something that's played on all of our minds at the moment, which is why you're here, I guess. So thank you for sharing your insights. Johan is actually quite world famous. He's one of the top 50 global voices on AI, is recognized by Swiss Cognitive. He's a human-centered artificial intelligence advocate and thought leader. And he is a research fellow at the School for Data Science and Computational Thinking at Stellenbosch University and an adjunct professor at the School of Business at Washington University. He was also a finalist for the 2022 IT Personality Award. And you can find him at aiforbusiness.net, but we'll give his email address out later if you need to talk to him. So quite well recognized internationally and locally, Johan, and really over to you, and thank you for joining us. And look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you for you and Sabsa. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I sometimes feel that if people know what I really know, no one will invite me to these events because I'm so daunted by how fast this technology is changing, how much I need to learn and read and keep abreast of what's happening. It reminds me of the definition of a futurist. A futurist, they say, is a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat that's not there. So to some extent, we all need to collaborate and really try and figure out what's happening. I mean, there's no single voice or a small amount of voices in the world that has the answers of the things that we are grappling with, the future of our children, future of education, ethics, privacy and the like. So I've got a few slides that I'd love to share with you. The slides will be available, I'm sure, afterward. And I don't want to do death by PowerPoint, and I've got a lot to go through. Some of them I'll go through quite quickly. So let me fire up those slides. Let me just do that. Then, and if I can kindly ask you just to confirm if you can see the slides full screen.
Yes, you can. Thanks, Johan.
Fantastic. So just before we start, just a few points. I'm going to leave some room, hopefully about 15, maybe 20 minutes for discussion, Q&A at the end. I learn more from the questions people ask than you can imagine. And it's good to be able to collaborate and disagree respectfully, hopefully. The recording of this webinar will be made available in the next few days. The slide deck, as I said, will be shared. We've got 2 or 3 polls that we want to conduct during this presentation. I just want to quickly remind people to go on mute if you don't mind. So we're going to have some polls, and we'd love to see what you say regarding the questions that we're asking. And I'm going to mention this again at the end, and I think there will be an email going out. Just a reminder that this is one of the first event of 3 that we're planning. On the next one is 22nd of May and the other one on the 20th of June, where we will be talking about the topics that you see on screen. Briefly, the agenda. I want to start off with a bit of a personal story because I discovered AI and I became a father at pretty much the same time. So that really made me think about education, the future of my child's education. And I'm going to share some personal thoughts on that, very personal, which might not be relevant or which might not be liked. I want to talk very briefly about a very dystopian view of the future of AI. You know, I've always been very positive about this technology. Of course, the potential for education, for healthcare, for economical equality, etc., is vast. The more I work in this field, the more I read and research and write, the more worried I become. And I'm going to share some thoughts on that. Then obviously, the elephant in the room, generative pre-trained models, ChatGPT, GPT-4 and the like. What the heck do we do as educators? I want to share some thoughts about what I think the business school of the future should or could potentially look like. And toward the end, just a few thoughts on practically what should business schools and also deans, directors, academia, facilitators, trainers, facilitators, and so forth do to prepare themselves for this future. And then I'll conclude and then we'll just have a look at some of the questions and comments. And as I've mentioned, I look forward to also learning from you. I don't have all the answers. I'm definitely that blind man in the dark room looking for the black cat that's not there, I often feel. So, about 8 years, maybe 9 years ago, I worked for one of our major banks, and one of the large global consulting firms came in and said they wanted to do a proof of concept using artificial intelligence and machine learning in the area where I worked. Now, at that time, even though I've been in technology pretty much all of my career, I haven't really heard much about AI, didn't really know what it was, had no clue. They conducted this proof of concept, and we were blown away by what this technology can do. Even 9 years ago, which is almost ancient history in the sense of AI. Now, it's been around for about 60 years, as many of you will know, but the last few years, the advance has been absolutely exponential. At that same time, and just on a very short and personal anecdote, my ex-wife and I adopted the most beautiful little baby boy. He was about 1.5 years old at the time. His name is Aiden. He's now 9. But I discovered AI and fatherhood at the same time, and that set the scene for my career up until now, and most likely for the rest of my career. Because becoming a father, and many of you in this webinar are parents yourself, it changes your life because you really start thinking about their future. What kind of world will we leave for them? What kind of education will they have access to? You know, we've got very particular challenges in our country. I mean, we are still in the second industrial revolution, I think, the generation and supply of electricity. Never mind all this 4IR stuff that we're speaking about, this digital divide, the unemployment, all this stuff that we are inundated with in the news. I lived in England for a few years, and I came back about 12 years ago because I want to live here. And I still want to live here. I still think this is one of the most beautiful, amazing countries without being an ostrich with my head in the sand. But everything I do, all the consulting I do, all the teaching and writing I do is about this little boy. What will he be left with? What will his peers be left with one day? Will they look back at us in 20 or 30 or 40 years from now and say, either thank you for leaving us a beautiful future, leaving us a world with longevity, with better education, better economic equality, and so forth? Or will they scold us for saying you have not regulated this technology, you didn't take it serious? We're living in an unimaginable dystopian world now, and I'm going to touch on some of the things briefly of what I think will be coming our way. So I'm speaking to you today as an AI professional, but I'm speaking to you primarily as a father concerned for the future of his beautiful child. So that leads me to this question, and if you've seen the Matrix, you'll recognize this picture. Do you take the red pill or the blue pill? I've been really grappling with this kind of topic the last few years, but especially this last year. Will I one day, and my son is only 9 now, a lot can still happen, will I one day want to send my child to university? What will be the state and the relevance of especially tertiary education and business schools in the future? And I've got a few real personal viewpoints I want to share with you next. It's my view. I'm most likely wrong or partially wrong. But I want to tell you as a parent what I'm concerned about when it comes to this decision. By the time my son is 18 or 19 or whatever, would I want to send him to study at a university? Many of you will know Neil deGrasse Tyson, the famous author, physicist, beautiful, wonderful person to follow on YouTube and on Twitter in particular. And about a month and a half ago, he was on this webinar regarding ChatGPT. And he said something that really made me think. And I want to share this at the beginning just to set the scene a bit. Now, let me just minimize what I see on my screen. He said, when students cheat on exams, it's because our school system values grades more than students value learning. It's worth just looking at that and thinking about that again. Do we, and I remember as a student, and I even remember, you know, I worked for a few very large global consulting firms in the past, and for that bank that I mentioned, and obviously we often have to go through compliance training. The training is one size fits all. It's very boring. And we literally just go through it to tick the boxes, to pass the multiple choice exam, to not get into trouble. Because if you don't pass, or if you don't do it in time, you get a lot of kind of bad marks against your reputation, against your ability to be promoted, and for career and salary increasement, and so forth. But is it true? And think about the institutions you represent, and think about education, especially tertiary as a whole. Are we driven primarily by the grades, or are we driven by the value of learning? And I think it's the former, and there are many practical, monetary, career kind of reasons for that. So here are some of my personal thoughts. And again, some of them you might, most likely you won't agree with. Some of them you might hopefully think about. These are my views. So the answer is, at this stage, I will never send my son to university. Never. Especially not in a few years when he's 18 or 19. Here are my reasons, and then I'll get into a bit of the AI stuff, the GTP stuff, what universities are doing, what I think we should be doing, and the rest. As you know, and a lot of this is not new or news, the rate of change in the world and the relevance of careers in the future is changing so quickly. So will I send my son to study for 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever years, and by the time he's done, not in all careers or career paths, but in many, by the time he's done studying, he will most likely be redundant and irrelevant already. Because in that time that he was studying, the rate of change within universities, within the curricula, within the skills of facilitators, trainers, professors, academia, and the like, has not kept up with the exponential curve of how quickly the world is changing. Now, some careers, like doctors, of course, I want my doctor to have gone to university. There are many careers, maybe chartered accountants and others, very specialized careers, that I would want to have a proper undergraduate and even postgraduate background. But I do think that many of the things we teach in universities will become very irrelevant and redundant. That's the first reason I won't send him to university. It costs too much, especially if you send them to res, but even if you don't, the cost of a 3, 4, 5-year degree is just becoming ridiculous. And why should we leave our children or us as parents with this burden of years and years and years of paying off student debts for a career that's possibly redundant by the time they end? That's the second reason. I think it takes too long to get a degree. I think the future of education will be shorter little training blocks or building blocks, building up to certain qualifications. But waiting 3 or 4 years for a bachelor's or honors, my view, I think that time is coming to an end. Not tomorrow, not next year. I think if we had this chat in 5 or definitely in 10 years, the scene would have changed. I think career guidance that our children receive in school, in high school in particular, is lacking tremendously. I mean, how many children watch Suits or LA Law and decide to become lawyers until they step into that law firm that first day and they realize it's not as glorious, glamorous, maybe as high paying as they thought? I don't think children who are 18 or 19 should make career decisions. So I'm all for this gap year, but not a year of smoking dope and partying and traveling the world. I think it should be a year of working, learning to work, learning that dealing with politics in an organization, maybe some sort of internship. I think that'll become more and more relevant. There are many knowledge working kind of jobs that will become completely automated in the next few years. We've already seen that with many jobs or certain aspects of job functions. So I would love my son to focus on a so-called unautomatable job. And I remember when I lived in England, some of my friends, and this is now about 12, 13 years ago, some of my friends who were builders and plumbers earned a heck of a lot more money than I did as a tech professional. Can we automate plumbing, bricklaying, building? We can't. We can definitely not automate caregiving, and caregiving or teaching for that matter, which should be much higher earning jobs than they are at the moment. But I would rather want him to do some sort of a craftsmanship, internship, practical skills because I think that's where the future money lies, in unautomatable jobs. This is not new, but training is not personalized. I hated high school. I hated university. It was a one-size-fits-all. They didn't recognize my own strengths and weaknesses in the way that the training was delivered. And I think this idea of personalized training, even hyper-personalization, is not new. I'm sure that many of you in your organizations have been and are looking at that. But if training is one size fits all, if it's the status quo, there's no way I'm going to send him to university. I think the faculty across universities are slowly, or maybe not slowly, losing their relevance. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I think many people who have been in academia for 20, 30, 40 years have not kept up, even though they are extremely smart, even though they have so much to offer from an experience point of view, from a wisdom point of view, from a guidance point of view. They have not kept up with the different generational differences, with where the world is going societally, politically, and also with technology. So I think those who teach our children, even in secondary education, I think, but especially in tertiary education, are becoming irrelevant. I would rather that my son watch Udemy videos or YouTube. He's got an iPad, he's playing games, teaching him skills to build buildings and the like. I think that's more relevant than nonsense just learning in school. Think of this. I mean, think of history. I hated history in school. I did very badly. Only after I, in my 20s and 30s, I started loving history because I learned that history is about meaning. It's why did it happen? What can we do to cause it not to happen? It's not the memorization of dates, names. Just a quick shout out again for people to go on mute. I hear a lot of noise. Learning to think. And this is an article in The Atlantic, I think it's about 7 or 8 years ago, by Nicholas Carr. Based on the popularity of that article, he wrote this book, The Shallows. But isn't this an interesting question? Is Google making us stupid? If I ask you, what is 235 minus 78? 10 years ago, I could answer that within a second. Right now, I have to really think about it. In fact, I don't have to think about it. I just put it in my phone. I don't even have to type it into my phone. I'll just, with a voice prompt, ask my phone. So are mathematical skills still relevant? I think, of course, they are, because they teach us to learn and to think. But are we raising a generation of people who have lost the ability to think and to think critically? Because technology can do most things that we used to do 20, 30 years ago. And that leads me to something I'm feeling very passionate about, the humanities. I call it the stepchild of academia. Because think of this, most children who tell their parents, I want to become a historian, an ethicist, a philosopher, I want to study religion or language or whatever. What is the first thing those parents will say? How will you make money out of that? And I've written about this a lot, especially in Business Day that I write for weekly over the last 2 years. My view is that before we jump into teaching high school children robotics and coding, which we should, and we're about 7 or 8 years too late on that in any case, and I don't know how the teachers are going to teach it unless they get taught themselves. I think we should teach our young people even if it's very condensed, aspects of the humanities. Let's teach them philosophy, ability to think, before we just teach them ChatGPT and Google and automation. So those are my 9 reasons for now why I won't send my son to university one day. Very briefly, let me give you my, sadly, dystopian view of the future. And as I've mentioned, the longer I work in this field and the more I'm on webinars, I've done work with the UN, I've done some work with Cambridge and Oxford universities. I speak to a lot of people globally, and there's a vast difference in the view of the so-called global north and to us in the development world regarding AI. We don't have that armchair luxury of just the great resignation, just resigning, changing our careers. We are dealing with some very serious issues around inequality and around the so-called digital divide. And at this stage, excuse me, and I'm going to ask you just to fire up this poll because it'll lead me to my next slides. And remember, there are no right or wrong answers or questions. I'd just love to see where you all are. So here's the question. In your view, which skills, when we think of an AI future, will be in most or the greatest demand? Will it be machine learning engineers, data scientists, philosophers or ethicists, or leaders, business leaders with technical understanding? There are no right or wrong answers. So, and again, I'm limited in what I can see, but if you could just fire up that poll, I would love for you all to answer. We won't see names and stuff. We're just going to see a result. And let's quickly see in the next 20 or so seconds, what's your view? Where are we? Which of these high level skills or categories will be most important? And you should be seeing the results as it happens at the moment. Let's give it a few seconds. Thank you. I see a lot happening. 29 already, 32. Thank you for contributing. Let's see. I'll give it another few seconds. As long as I see the graphs moving, I know people are thinking and they're clicking. Okay, I think most people have answered. So it seems that 35%, most people think it's data scientists. It's busy changing again. And you know, all of these are correct answers. They're all deeply relevant skills that we need. All right, so data scientists, followed by leaders with technical understanding, followed by philosophers and ethicists, and then machine learning engineers. So let me just stop sharing here. So, all right. Do you like to know the answer? I haven't here shared the sources that I've read about this for some years now. Let me quickly, I don't know, Anne, is there a way to stop it and to maybe just show the final results?
Oh, I did. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Final one in the last slide. I think it's there. Can you see it?
All right, I see the mons. Okay, so that's cool. I'm going to just close it here. Let's see if it pops up again. Doesn't matter. So
can you see it? Johan? No.
I've seen the final results, and I've just closed it on my screen. So I don't know if people see the same, but I'm gonna. So I'll show you what the answer is, and again, I don't have the sources here. I can provide it after this. What is the answer? Go to my slides. The greatest need we have, skills-wise, in the future of AI, are for philosophers and ethicists. And it's most likely a combination of the things you see on the screen and many more. And as I said, certainly all of these are relevant. But because we're opening up the proverbial can of worms on the future of humanity, and I'm going to touch on that very shortly, on the changing nature of what it means to be human, what it means to be conscious, what it means to be Homo sapien, or a hominoid being on this planet, is going to change because of this technology. We're talking here about, privacy, massive issue. We're talking about brain-computer interface technology, already a reality, not yet regulated, not yet widely available. We're talking here about designer babies, already a reality. We think it's happening in China, and the technology is there to custom design babies. But thank goodness it's not yet available, and it's definitely not regulated. What about artificial limbs? Again, not new, it's been around for years, but to what extent do I get artificial limbs, 3D printed? Maybe I can pick it up at Postnet tomorrow if I order it online. What about people waiting for a new heart or a liver? What if we can just 3D print it? Sounds a bit ridiculous. We might get there. So if everything in my body is replaced by artificial equipment, but my brain, am I still human or not? Most likely. But what if parts of my brain or my whole brain is artificial? Am I then still human? And there are many, many more. I mean, if we think of the weaponization of AI, of drones, you know that in the Ukraine, for instance, there's a lot of evidence in that war from both sides that the kill decision is no longer made by humans. You know, typically a drone would do facial recognition, send the data to a commander, and that human commander will make the decision to launch the missile. There's ample evidence at the moment that algorithms make that kill decision. Is that ethical? What if it is a terrorist that you want to kill, but he or she is walking with a 3-year-old baby boy or girl next to them? Would a human launch the missile? Most likely not. Would an algorithm launch the missile? I don't know. So just think of that. The future of AI needs more and more ethicists and philosophers and a lot more philosophical conversations than technical conversations. Here's what I think will happen in the next few years. Firstly, we're going to automate everything. If you know authors like Yuval Noah Harari, and I hope you do, he wrote Sapiens, he wrote 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, he wrote Homo Deus, Latin for man, God, or godly man. Will AI make us godlike? Fascinating thing to Google, and I've written about this. What is the future of religion in the world of AI or of faith? It's not the topic for today. We need a scotch and a cigar and a lot more time for that. But will we become redundant? Harari writes about the creation of the so-called useless class. Will there be almost no job that our children can do in 20 or 30 or 40 years that's not automated, completely automated already? That'll be a scorched earth situation, in my view. We have no regulation across the globe when it comes to AI and data. We have a lot of regulation around privacy, for PR in South Africa, world class. I haven't really seen it enforced. Have you seen TransUnion go to prison or receive a 10 million rand fine? Transnet, many others? No. We have GDPR in Europe, and the European Union is making a lot of strides on AI regulation. But it is lacking globally, but it is massively lacking in our country. I don't even think, and this is not a political statement, but I don't think anyone in our government who needs to understand this technology even nearly understands it and the urgency. I kind of don't blame them. Again, if your whole day is about keeping the lights on and feeding people who are starving, you're most likely not worried about AI. But regulation is one of our biggest problems. Colonization. I think countries like China will rule the world in the next few years through technology. They have already colonized most of Africa. I think governments or states will continue losing their power compared to technology, large technology firms like Meta or Facebook, Google and others, trillion-dollar companies who already have all our data, can pretty much do what they want with that, lack of regulation. So I think this colonization of data and the holding, or the limitations it will give to our children regarding access to economic equality, to healthcare and the like, will become a massive problem. Already a massive problem, surveillance and privacy. We know the story. If you have a chat to your mate about mountain biking, what is on your Facebook feed the next day? Mountain biking. I have more and more of my clients who I encourage, when you have a board meeting, an in-person board meeting, have a locker system of sorts outside of the boardroom. Lock your phones away. If you have a virtual business meeting, take your phone away, put it in the fridge, put it in the microwave, or put it in a different room, because you don't know who is listening. And someone or something is always listening and always watching. It really is an Orwellian world, and I'm a big fan of Orwell. But what he spoke about in 1984, even though it was a commentary on the Soviet Union, which he wrote in 1948, I think we're going to get more and more of that. Big Brother, thought police, and so forth, think right, and the like. Are we creating a new hominid species? So think of this, and again, people have different views on the evolutionary history of mankind. But and again, this dark person, this blind man or a blind person in a dark room looking for a black cat. We think between 50 and 80,000 years ago, Homo sapien got the upper hand over the rest of the species on this planet, especially Neanderthals. We're still not quite sure why that happened. And we still have Neanderthal DNA in us, albeit limited. But are we getting to a place in our evolutionary history where there is a new hominid species entering our planet? The difference is this time it's not an evolutionary force. It is this time us creating it. Nietzsche called it the Übermensch, the super person whose brain is connected to the cloud, who's super smart, who's got incredible longevity. And the problem with that is only a very small portion of our population will have that. What happens to the rest of us? And will we again get to a point where the next species, even though we are creating it, will in time cause our extinction as Homo sapiens? Very philosophical conversation, something to think about. Okay, so let's get to the elephant in the room. about 8 or 9 minutes left before we're opening up for questions. If you haven't tried ChatGPT yet, under which rock have you been sleeping? I hope you've been playing with it. It is incredible. I'm a pro subscriber. It's $20 a month because I use it every day. I use ChatGPT or GTP4, which is incredible. But OpenAI is just one of the many platforms. And I know there's a lot of information on this slide. But there are a vast array of generative pre-trained models or generative AI models being used in very different domains. And a lot of these are very specialized in what they do and are much more powerful than OpenAI's platform. Here we're talking about text to images, or images to text, or videos to text, or videos to articles, or whatever. There's so many different applications. I mean, I've seen applications where you can take a legal document, like a non-disclosure agreement with 400 pages, you ingest it, and it will give you on one page in a few seconds a highlight. What is something to worry about? What are the things you need to think about? Does this comply to local regulation and the like? This is just going to increase in exponential strength more and more and more. We really are moving from search, internet search, to answers. And we've seen this with GTP technology being integrated into Microsoft, who have more than a $10 billion investment in OpenAI. But just remember this, even though OpenAI, ChatGPT, DALL-E, the other platforms have really caught our imagination, they are just a sliver of many, many platforms out there. We've seen that Bloomberg started Bloomberg GPT specifically to financial analysis. Amazon have launched their own GPT. A lot of companies are internally launching generative pre-trained large language models, and for a lot of good business use. So these you'll be familiar with. What do we do, especially from an academic point of view, regarding potential plagiarism? And there are some powerful tools, and you are using these tools, or at least hopefully one of them. I've tested them all, and they are still lacking. I would just do a ChatGPT thing. I know it's not my thing. I'll put it into some of these platforms. It will pick up plagiarism, or some elements of plagiarism. But what I would often do when I test it is I will take my original content, the articles I've been writing for Reuters and Business Day and Brainstorm and others, ChatGPT. I'll put it into these platforms, and often they will tell me 90% plagiarism detected. So hopefully the creators behind these tools will keep pace with this exponential advance of generative AI models, and that we will be able to pick it up. What I think we're going to have to do, and I've already heard of a lot of institutions doing it, is, sorry. In fact, I'm going to skip this. I'll come back to this. Are we going back to oral examinations? Some of you might be doing this. We can't trust the written content that our students provide, because our plagiarism checkers and the other technologies that we use, we can't trust it. We don't know if they're efficient. They pick it up incorrectly, or they're missing it. Are we getting back to oral examinations, and how much time and effort will that take? Is it even reasonable to expect? Something that I think we'll see more and more, and I don't know, and I'd love to hear if some of you know it, and some of those tools I've just shown might have elements of it. Because I think one of the best ways to pick up potential plagiarism is if you can take the last few months or weeks or years worth of assessments or submissions of a student, you ingest that into a platform that picks up their particular style, their nuances around their writing, the language they use, and you compare it to a recent submission. Maybe then we can pick up that there's something wrong. Writing style detection kind of technology. And then the other question is, do we block this technology or not? And I'd love to hear what you're doing in your organizations. But before we get to our next poll, I want to quickly go back, and this I'm going to go very, very quickly or fast through. What are some of the business schools doing? And again, I'm not going to read through these slides. The slides will be available. But if you look at what, and this is kind of divided into teaching, research, administration. Are universities already using generative pre-trained models, ChatGPT? One of the themes you'll see here is around, obviously, content creation, examination or assessment creation, but especially around automation of administrative kind of tasks. Think of this, especially if you're an academic or a teacher, facilitator. How much of your time is divided between forward-thinking, research, cutting-edge stuff, teaching or admin? And do you really like all the admin you need to do? Look at Wharton. Again, you can read through it very briefly. I'm going to spend a second or two on each slide. There's only 3 or 4 more before we get to the poll. Look at what Stanford is doing. These universities are incorporating it, but in a smart and a controlled way. So that brings us to the question, do we just totally ban it? Do we just totally let the rules fly free? Anyone can do what they want? Or do we use it specific and regulated? And how do we do that? London Business School, the benefits of using this technology is immense. It's not just the downsides that you should be thinking about. Okay, so I've used this. So let's get to our next poll. And Anne, if you can help me. So your institution, what is happening? You haven't really thought about it? No way, we've absolutely banned it. We're still kind of figuring out, we're not sure what you want to do, or we are happy for students to use it, but maybe with some guidelines. I'd love to see, and there you can hopefully see it on your screen. Let's see as the graphs move. And again, we're not going to reveal who's saying what. I don't even actually think we will be able to pick up who answered what, but it will be interesting to see what your view is. What is your current institution's current view on using generative pre-trained models? I already see more than 2/3 we're still figuring out, which I think is most likely a global statistic. I'll give it a few more seconds because our time is quickly running out if we want to do some Q&A still. Okay, I think let's stop there. More than 2/3 are still figuring out, which, and again, like I said, I think that is what's happening across the world. How long are we going to be spending time figuring it out? That's going to be interesting. Okay, let's talk briefly. In the next few slides, I'm going to go through quickly because I already see there's 10 chats or comments in the chats. I can't see what it is just yet. Love to get some comments on this as well. So again, Business School of the Future, time-appropriate course design. And there are a lot of limitations on this time-appropriate thing, which I'll talk about now. But with this quickly and vastly and changing and fast-changing technological landscape, especially from a business audience point of view, a business leadership point of view, how do we adapt and pivot as often as we need to? Now, we know that a big part of what we offer will always stay the same. Principles around sound financial management, leadership, and the like. AI is not going to replace that. I'm not saying rip out the carpet from under everything that you're doing, but to stay relevant, a portion of what you offer your clients, especially if we think about exec education, has to adapt with the times we live in. And if you think that since October, November last year, when ChatGPT became mainstream and a thing, until now, we've seen a lot of change. You have not seen anything yet. It is going to become crazy. And how we keep up with staying relevant will be very interesting. We have to offer more hyper-personalized training. Not everything for all people, but specific to certain domains, certain industries, certain clients, certain individuals. We have to use the data we have on our learners and our students and our clients to better assess how to deliver content to them. Will it be audio-visual, just visual? Will it be audiobooks, and so forth? Immersive technology like augmented reality and virtual reality is becoming more and more relevant. This is something that's out of our control. Registering your courses, getting approval. We can't wait 3 to 5 years for it to happen. How we as an industry body work with government to help them here, that's an interesting conversation. We have to work with them, but they're going to have to move quicker. Please, can we have good facilitators? Expert, experienced, but who can teach? And I think a lot of you are bringing in experts, domain experts. But I've seen this so many times, especially in the world I live in, where I speak at a lot of tech conferences. There are many people who are by far the smartest people I've ever met. The content is great, but please lock them up in the room somewhere. Never let them speak in front of people. This is a bit of a conundrum, I think, as well. Finding teachers, facilitators who are both industry experts, who are really good at leading, teaching, inspiring. But that's what we're going to need more and more of. I think, and I alluded to this in the why I won't send my son to university, I think we need shorter, more focused building blocks of how do we take learners on this journey with us rather than this 2, 3, or even 6-month course, that we have to have these kind of lines in the sand. And I know that kind of exists already, but I think we, especially with this new generation, and I've lost touch with where in the alphabet we are. Is it Z or is it an alpha or whatever? I think shorter, quicker, more tangible course delivery and results will be the nature of business schools in the future. This one is important, consultative selling. When you sit in front of your corporate customer, the bank, the telco, and you're discussing what kind of exec training they need. And this is what I've done all my career, consulting with clients, because often clients don't know where their problem is. They think they know, but what they say they think they need and what you know as an expert they need is often very different. So the ability for us from a business school point of view to guide our, especially our large clients in a consultative manner, to use these building blocks that we've created to help them solve a specific problem is going to become more and more relevant. And then, of course, how we assess, how we do our admin and research will become more and more AI and automation infused. Do we fear it? Or are we excited that it's going to alleviate us from the nonsense we don't want to do in any case, or the lower level, lower value kind of work streams that we have to do? Almost at the end, keen to see what people are saying. So let's talk a bit about the future. Here are my thoughts. I think business leaders across the world, but especially faculty, lecturers, those in universities, those in schools should understand AI fundamentals more and more. I think there's a great need. You know, in business, research shows that about 70 to 80% of business leaders, even today, have no clue what this AI stuff is all about. The challenge there is they leave it to the IT people who will AI and automate everything they can without it mapping to business objectives and outcomes and returns on investment and the like. But all of you on this webinar, all of us, should not have to become experts, but at least know the basics. And there's so many free resources out there. Just learn the lingo. What's the difference between AI and machine learning and Internet of Things or edge computing? When students or vendors or whoever start throwing these terms around, do you know what they're talking about? Because I find in my day-to-day job, most people I deal with have no clue. They're very good at throwing the terminology around, but if you ask them, so what did you mean with that? They often can't answer it. I think we should become skilled at using AI-related tools in our craft, in how we train, how we teach, how we design, how we deliver. There are many platforms out there, but they will become more and more readily available and very costly platforms available for us in the world of education. Automating our tasks, think of the end-to-end value stream from designing, advertising a course, student intake, student assessments, all the way through. How much of that can be automated? A lot of it can already with current technology. As faculty, as teachers and the like, we also continuously have to learn about this technology, where it's going. Even if you have a specific area of speciality, it could be accounting, it doesn't have to be tech, it could be leadership, but you have to stay abreast of where this technology is going and the impact it's having on businesses and on society. We have to more and more collaborate with each other and with experts out there. Please work with people who implement this technology as a day job. Don't just teach the textbook. Don't teach things that people can Google. I think the most value we can give learners is teaching them the things that's gone wrong in our experience, because the rest they can pretty much Google. Why do AI or large language models or chatbot kind of technology or automation go wrong? It's often not technology. It's the way it's implemented, the way change management happens and the like. So we have to stay abreast and we have to keep on collaborating with experts. And I think there's going to be more and more scope from an interdisciplinary collaboration point of view. If you think of a specific faculty or area of education, we're going to have to collaborate more and more, because it's almost like this big circle of different careers, different technologies. It's becoming smaller and smaller as technology is becoming smarter and smarter. So we are going to have to work together more and more. And our final, I think it's our final poll, we're almost done. This is an interesting question, and I hope the result is positive. So I think there is a need. Would you and your institution be interested if SAPSA offers training to ensure that you and your faculty, your facilitators, are more and more AI ready? Don't answer maybe. You can if you want to, but thanks, Anne. I see it on the screen. Because we'd love to come back to you, and I'll work with Anne on that as well. So how can we offer courses of value or training of value to make sure that you as an institution and the wonderful people who are part of the institution stay abreast of this technology? And it's wonderful to see 97% says yes. And I think, let me just see what's next. I can't believe the time has gone so quickly, because I can do this for 4 hours. We haven't even scratched the surface yet. Let's quickly see. Lastly, a reminder, and this will go out as a newsletter. We will have workshop number 2 in May. We'll talk about research specifically, and then the job market. We've already touched on this, but I've got some very interesting thoughts on that I'd love to share with you on the 20th of June. So look out for the newsletter. Register, block your diaries. It'll be interesting to see how we can build on what we've been doing today. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I would love to see questions, comments. We've got about, I think, 12 minutes, and we can go over for those who can. I don't know, Anne, can you help me? Is there any specific things we can also, if people want to put up their hand, maybe pop up on screen? Remember, I also need to learn, so disagree with me respectfully. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johan. That was really insightful. I don't see any specific questions as yet, but does anyone want to kick the ball off to start rolling? Cobus, have you got a question?
I don't. I've frequently tap into Johan's brain, so yeah. So no, I'm good. Very much concur with his view on these things. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was one comment about anthropology being part of the humanities. Absolutely agreed with that. So thanks for that. I see Marlise's hand is up.
Thank you, Johan. Such an amazing session, and I could listen to you for hours on end, because this is so topical. And I'm glad to see that there are many of us grappling with this and recognizing the massive change that it brings to our landscape. And I like your brutal honesty. Thank you. And being assertive about your opinions in terms of the higher education space. My question, so one of the things, well, maybe 2 questions, I apologize. So the first is, if you had to list like 2 or 3 competencies that we would want our graduates to exit with, right, regardless of the format, etc., of learning that we follow, to prepare them for this difficult to navigate a new world, an ever-changing world, what would those be? And then the one thing that we really grapple with is how do we assess in a sustainable, scalable way? You know, it's easy if you've got a couple of hundreds of students, but when you've got thousands of students, you know, it's mind-boggling for us in terms of how do we do that feasibly.
Thanks for those easy questions, Marlies. Because I think on the first one, there are so many different things we could say. And again, this is kind of old news, but I think learning to learn is something we should impart to our students. And we should, I mean, think of this for me. I mean, if I go to a seminar and I have to listen to somebody speak for 2 hours, you know what's the one thing that pops up in my mind? I can never go back to university. It's so boring. Boring. It kills me. But as we grow older and as we work in our speciality, I think a lot of us have unlearned how to keep on learning. So I think if we can help, especially young people, that hunger, that enthusiasm. I mean, this world is your oyster of information out there. Not to believe anything or everything rather that you find on Google or YouTube, to have the kind of the wit around you to know what is nonsense, what is filled with bias and the like. You know, it's like my dad. He's a smart man, but when he starts his conversation with, I saw this thing on YouTube, then I know I cringe, because it's going to be about 5G and COVID and stuff like that, and bless his soul. But, you know, so I think that's the one thing is to keep on learning. How do we keep on learning? And to be enthusiastic, not to be fearful. I mean, even though I sketched a bit of a grim future, which I think is relevant regarding AI and tech, it's also to grasp the world with 2 hands and to have had the privilege to go through tertiary education is something that less and less people will have. And to say you've got and I love this a video, and some of you most likely might not like him, but I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. Huge. I most likely will get a tattoo of his name on my chest at some stage, even though some of his things are very controversial. There's this video where he talks on YouTube, where he talks to first-year students at Harvard. And one of the things he says is, because they're grappling with, what should I do one day? What's going to happen to us, and so forth. And he says something, and I know it sounds simplistic, but it really made me think. He says, firstly, you've had a wonderful privilege to go through tertiary education. It's almost that thing of, to whom much is given, much will be expected from. But he said, find and alleviate unnecessary suffering. That, and I know it's very simplified, I think the end result of education, apart from good livelihood, looking after your children, a nice pension one day, all those relevant things. Let's use the things we learn to alleviate suffering, to do something good. So again, that's my philosophical view. On the second question, on assessments, I don't really have an answer, Marlies. I think there will be more and more technologically relevant means in the future of doing it. Especially, I think, when it comes to distance learning, I mean, it's very difficult. It's so easy to wangle the system, especially when it comes to multiple choice. So whether it will be more immersive environments, more augmented reality, more hands-on, I think let's keep on grappling. So I don't have an answer, but it's a very good question, Marlies. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Johan. That's very valuable.
Thank you. I see my very good friend and often coffee companion, Tumi from UJ. Your hand is up. Lovely to see you here.
Lovely to hear from you once again, Johan. I don't think I have seen you in a long time. Happy New Year. I don't think we've seen each other this year. Happy New Year and good afternoon, colleagues. A fascinating topic. I think I agree with my colleague Marlies that, if we could listen to you all day, we would, which is why we usually have our coffee meetings, and one is coming soon. I'm interested to pick your brain on what your thoughts are with regards to where do you think this type of AI technologies like ChatGPT is going to have the most impact? And the reason why I'm asking is that I completely agree with you that from an executive education perspective, the spray and pray methodology and approach is becoming less and less impactful. And we're looking at ways to scale personalized education. Now, if you view at your typical student that comes through a business school, most of them are in specialized positions, finance manager, digital marketer, all of those things. And that's why I'm asking these questions, to say, if you look at these various functions, finance or project management, whatever the case may be, where do you think these types of AI technologies like ChatGPT would have the most impact? A colleague of mine and I were arguing that marketing is one area where, the likes of ChatGPT will have the most impact. But I would like to hear your thoughts as to which of the functions do you think would be mostly shaken by the likes of ChatGPT and similar AI applications? Thanks.
Thanks, Tumi. Looking forward to that next coffee. Great question. Look, I think across the board, all job functions will be impacted to some extent. Excuse me. Definitely marketing, content creation. I think, I do a lot of consulting work with large marketing teams. They're all really fearing this. And my message is, let it do the heavy lifting for you. But, ChatGPT will never have your experience, your specific view on your client, your market, the problems you're solving for. But if it's about writing a quick article or creating some slides, let's AI do the heavy lifting. So, but in the training I've been doing, especially with banks, one of the areas most in need of training is the legal function and the HR or human capital management functions. Because again, back to personalized training, compliance training, how do we assess candidates? How do we onboard them quicker and in a way that's more pleasant for them? This whole life cycle, employee life cycle management and customized, personalized training and upskilling relevant to where they are in their careers, it is a massive opportunity. The problem with legal teams, and I recently did a 3-day training course with one of our 4 big banks, because what they said is the bank is rightfully implementing more and more AI, more chatbots, more conversational AI, more automated decisioning around credit decisioning and the like. What should they as a legal team get ready for? And the challenge again is the regulatory frameworks are non-existent, really. I think every company are creating their own internal regulatory frameworks around this. But the case law is also lacking. So think of this, if a bank's chatbot gives you incorrect financial advice and it leads to damage, who do you sue? The bank, the creator of the chatbot, the designer of the algorithm, and so forth. Another example, not entirely relevant to this, but it will make the point. If a drone flies, sorry, I'm steering myself. Sorry. If a drone flies into a building and causes damage or damage to a person, is it the pilot? Is it the manufacturer of the airplane? Is it the people who created the algorithms? So there's no case law for this. So I think so maybe just to sum it up, in the human capital management function and in legal in particular, I think we have the greatest needs from an exec education point of view, but it's going to impact everyone. Yeah, so that was a long answer to, and I hope I answered you too. Thanks for asking that. I don't see any other hands. Let's quickly see the chat and anything else. We're almost at the end, but I can stay on a bit longer for those who might want to stay on if it's okay. Let's see, Quibus, how do you suggest we protect ourselves against AI hallucination and AI manipulation? Maybe a theme for, that's a theme for whiskey, Quibus. It's a good question though. I think, well, hallucination, I assume you could refer to deep fakes, for instance, audio or video deep fakes, potentially manipulation the same. You know, think of this, the future of law. If I go to a court and I present evidence in audio or video or imagery format, there's no longer a guarantee that it is authentic. I mean, you can, and there are free platforms if you want to play with it. What I do is I record this one, I can't remember the name now, I played with it the other day. I talk for about a minute, it records my face and my voice. And then I pick a different background, different dress code. I can change certain aspects of my face and I can let it read a script that I'm writing. And I tell you now, I've downloaded it and I've sent it on WhatsApp to my dad or my sister. They did not believe me that it wasn't me. So I will again, back to case law. We know regulation is behind innovation, but at this stage, it's so far behind, it's shocking. Let's quickly see if there's anything else. How about a coffee guide for easy chart to share with anyone who wants to listen, children and adults? That's interesting, Bernice. Needs context and so forth. There's so much more we can say about it. And you know, I can't give you the, you know, the end be all and end all answer to these things. But hopefully there were some things I said that will trigger you into thinking and grappling with it. Peter, I see your hand is up. You're welcome to ask your question.
Give me a sec. Okay, I think, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel I got to introduce myself a little bit. My name is Peter Illeri. I'm not sure, maybe I'm the only one joining you from the United Arab Emirates University today.
Wow.
I received this invitation this morning from my dean. And wow, this is probably the best 100% the best workshop I'll be attending today, probably the best for the month and possibly the best for the year. So thank you very much for taking us through this highly, highly important and topical issue. I'm originally from Nigeria, and I had this unique experience of moving between the paradigm whereby students were not allowed to use calculators at all, and I'm an accounting student. And then that was my first year in university. And then the very next year, we were all allowed to use calculators in class. And I'm wondering whether I'm watching the same movie all over again with ChatGPT and the other AI. I love, you know, most of what you presented in terms of the challenges that we face in academia, and some of the solutions in terms of, you know, the philosophies, the humanities, and the ethics of it all. But I'm wondering whether we as academics need to change our approach completely. And I'm coming from the background of saying, why do we perhaps need to be asking questions? And I know you did mention something about oral examination. Isn't it time for us to give credit to other abilities in our students rather than maybe giving answers out of their brains? With the kind of tools that are being provided by artificial intelligence, I think it's almost time for humanity to outsource its brain, to machines, and hopefully become the manager and bosses of those machines. Or hopefully they don't get ahead of us, because that's one of the big fears. I relate very well to your fatherhood stories. It brought tears to my eyes. I think that's very, very important. Unfortunately for me, and I put that in quote, maybe it's too late because my children are in the university now, and we face this question every day. They have assignments to submit. Should they get involved with using artificial intelligence to achieve and the answer I give them is, hey, this technology is available to you. Just make sure you are the boss of the technology rather than, but I feel that I'm getting a little bit of the opposite from you. In other words, it sounds like we should, keep the genie in the bottle rather than take advantage of all the opportunities that is there for us to take. I don't think if I'm thinking right here.
Peter, thank you for joining us from very far away and for your very valuable comments. Yeah, I think we have to use this genie, but if it can only pop up when we rub the glass, it would be great. Yeah. But if it explodes out, we're going to have trouble. So I'll give you an honest admission. So my son is only 9. I've got a Google Home device, and he is cheating on his homework with AI, and I encourage it. So he will say, hey, Google, how do I spell chameleon? Because I think for me that he is digitally fit and know how to use technology is more important for me personally as a parent than knowing how to spell chameleon. So I think and look, this technology it's like a boat that is rushing down a river and you are on it or you're not. What we do while we're on it, I think is what we're grappling with. So should AI and the stuff we spoke about today be part of our everyday lives and of education? Absolutely. I don't think we have a choice. We have no choice. Our choice is what do we do with it? And scarily, it doesn't really seem that anyone really knows. And we also have to think of it in the context of our own country, our own society, and our own continent. So that's why I said maybe I'm not giving a lot of answers, but if I can trigger your thinking to figure it out in a way for yourself, your own institution, and a way we can collaborate, that would be great. So Peter, thank you for your comments on that. Let's quickly see. Cool. And I'm still cool with time, but there's still a few people online, so happy for more questions or comments. I don't know, anything from your side, from a SAPSA point of view? What do you think?
Well, I'm also happy to carry on the session if everybody is, or those people that want to carry on talking. I think this is really a critical discussion to have at the business schools, knowing that everyone is grappling with the changes that are taking place and how to incorporate it into the curricula so that we do remain relevant. And hopefully your son one day does attend a business school, because it's all very fun and well to say, well, I'm not sending my child to university, but this grouping of people in our livelihood is based around business education, which follows on normally from university. So I'm quite interested from your perspective on what changes and discussions strategically we should be having at our business schools to make sure that we are going to be incorporating courses that are going to address the future needs. And yes, we're all grappling with issues, but how do we leverage we also have faculty that maybe have not had exposure to AI and have been teaching for many years. What is out there for those people to upskill and get in touch and be relevant and maintain their livelihood? I guess that's really one angle of it, and also to deliver what people are wanting in the future. So that's just a comment from my side, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts of how business schools can keep up with the trends of where we're going. Thanks, Johan.
Thanks, and I'll give my 2 cents worth, and then I'll go to patients. I see her hand's been up for a bit. Look, I don't think we should rock the apple cart. I think we have businesses that we're running. We have clients that are buying what we're teaching. I think, again, it's not that everything is irrelevant and everything should change, but as long as we don't lose our grip on the steering wheel, which we slowly might be losing if we don't keep up with not just technological change, but societal change because of technology. So I'm not saying, can it, stop it, no more business schools, etc. Again, basic accounting, leadership. I mean, a lot of the things that we teach will always be relevant, irrespective of how much of it is automatable. I definitely want my accountant, even if she uses AI to do my books, I want her to at least understand the basics of accounting, no matter how good she is with AI. So again, it's as long as we can just keep up with the changes that's happening. And I think there we need to get out of the somewhat secluded worlds we live in, I think. As academics or business schools, or maybe even because our clients don't even know what they're going to need next year. They keep on maybe asking for the same things, and yes, we're running a business, we're going to keep on teaching, keep on billing, but can we guide them on what they will need next year, even though they don't know they're going to need it next year? And I think that's where we have to work together better. But we have to, I mean, I read a book a week. I try and attend many webinars on the future of education and where AI is going. But we can't cover everything. I think we just need to find a way of talking about what's going to happen in the next year or two. And again, that's blind man in a dark room conversation. And to what extent do we want to adapt? Because maybe the answer is, let's just adapt 10%. We don't think it's worth adapting all the way. But how do we keep on staying relevant, because we know where this tech is taking people and businesses? Hopefully that answers the question. But let's just not become the status quo. And I think a lot of us already have, sadly, possibly. Let me quickly go to patients before I get into trouble. Hi, patients. Thanks for waiting for me.
No problem. Thank you very much. That's why I'm patient. I'm very patient. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, and thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. Yeah, it's the reality, but very scary. I'm also looking at our local context, whereby one of the challenges that we are facing is issues of inequality. So I'm thinking of this child in a rural area and how, the technology, artificial intelligence, robotics are moving very fast. And I'm like, are we not, of course, we cannot stop it, but is it not really widening the gap? And is one community not going to be really greatly disadvantaged, whereby you're dealing with a student who has got all this technology at their disposal? Another element is also issues of policy, to say, how do we really fit this in our assessment policies? Because you'd find that we also have our assessment policies, and as we also face these new things, we need also to embed them in our policies, because we are also concerned about the kind of product that we're going to produce. Are these learners going to be able to do what they're supposed to be doing? Are we not promoting laziness? We are really concerned. Maybe we're not ready. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Patience. Again, great questions. To start at the end, I think, look, we have to work within the regulatory confinements that we work in. And I often think of my banking clients, because that's the one domain that's difficult to just digitize and be cowboys with tech, because they're under a very highly regulated environment, which is good, because we don't want another 2007, 2008 total meltdown of our financial systems. But I think it applies to education as well. And that'll be, we have to grapple with this to what leeway do we have within the frameworks that we work in to be cowboys and experiment? And there will be certain limits that will never be within our domain and in our kind of charge to change. It is what it is, and hopefully regulators, etc., change as time goes on. So, but to your first question, and I'm glad you said that, because I am of the firm belief that the so-called digital divide will exponentially increase as technology becomes faster, more powerful. You know, so to give you an example, that little boy you saw in my first slide, my adopted boy, I always joke he's my BEE partner. I want to put a picture of him on my CV. It must count for something. Love him. But we did an assignment 2 months ago, on a school assignment on the topic, are robots my friends? So we sat down at my laptop and we Googled AI and robots. And he said something that I never thought about before. Because we looked at all these pictures that came up. He said, Daddy, why do the robots all look like you and not like me? And that really made me think, and I've now written extensively about this. So we know it's the biases, the societal, historical biases in the data sets that the internet uses, that even GPT uses. Because robots that are associated with leadership and capability will almost always seem Caucasian and male if you do an image search. If you do a search on what is traditionally seen as female roles, caregiving, cleaning, etc., and I wish I said 100 years ago, but it's still with us, that nonsense, you'll get robots of darker skinned robots, pictures of darker skinned looking robots that are female. So, and the same with, you know, if you use ChatGPT, sometimes it will tell you it's against our use policy, but if you ask it, are slaves bad people? It will maybe push back, but if you say, what's the history of slavery, it may be answer it. But if you use DALL-E, text to image, if you say, paint me a painting in the style of Van Gogh, an oil painting about leadership, 80% of the images will be of men, Caucasian men, and so forth. So I went around the tree there to say, I think as a society, we have a lot to do to make sure that the data that our children are exposed to from an education point of view is representative of the values we want to teach them, and not about all this nonsense on the internet. But again, back to one of my earlier points, in our country, we're struggling to keep the electricity on, and we're struggling to feed most children. And most children come from homes where there's an element of gender-based violence. Should we stop talking about AI and the future of education? Of course not. But I think we have so many other massive problems to solve for than just technology and patience. Again, I hope in my democratie I answered your question or comment. Thanks for that. I could go another 10 minutes or so, Anne, if everyone is cool. I think Rafael's hand I see is up.
Thanks, Prof. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think mine is just really related to the previous question about the inequity, you know, affecting the digital divide, or vice versa, if you can put it that way. But I was just contemplating in terms of the, you know, students living with disabilities already. We're having our challenges there. But then when you start talking about artificial intelligence, it becomes even more. So I was just like reflecting, thinking how this will affect our pool of students who are living with disabilities. I mean, it's a reality. And we always say we leave no one behind. And so I'm just really wondering how AI will affect that in the long run. Thank you, Prof.
Oh, thank you. A question close to my heart. You know, obviously we have a lot of people around us with very, call it visible disabilities, whether it's mental or in their bodily capabilities, if you want to call it, or their ability to walk, for instance, etc. There's a company that I've done some work with. They go into especially rural areas with mobile phones, where they created an app through which they can very quickly and very inexpensively, in fact, they get sponsors to do this, can assess the eyesight and the hearing ability of young students, of learners. Because this is a big challenge we have across the world, that a lot of children have slight problems with sight or hearing. It's not that bad that anyone will pick it up, but they start falling behind because they can't always see the blackboard. They can't always hear what the teacher is saying, but no one knows to look for it because it's not clear. And what this organization is doing, and at scale, which is very exciting, is they can pick up using this algorithm based on the mobile app, whether some learners are struggling with hearing and seeing, and then they can recommend things like, even if it's as simple as move them closer to the front of the class, because maybe there's no way of getting medical care for it because of lack of funds or lack of doctors and so forth. So we should always use this technology and we should leave no one behind. It's easier said than done. You know, I often tell my clients, because this question of responsible AI and bias and data is a very topical thing and it keeps on popping up. I always say that the core team in your business, and think of this, even the core team in your university or in your institution, who are looking at this technology should be multi-gender, multi-ethnic, from different age groups, if you can, from different parts of the world, because inevitably we are going to have our own biases, even though we mean well, reflected in what we want to do. So to give you an example, so for me, when you say a family, the first picture that pops up in my mind, it's a man, a woman, and a kid or kids. That's family for me. But that's incomplete, because why can't it be a single parent? Why can't it be a same gender partnership? Why can't it be a couple without children? So if I'm going to create an algorithm looking for families, it'll be my view of family. So my colleague next to me might say, but wait, I'm in a same-sex relationship. You are missing it. So that's one example. But we also need people of disabilities, one way or another, in these core teams, if we can, because we will not think of everything. By unleashing the most powerful technology we've ever created, infused with our biases. This is such an important thing to feel with. Thank you. We have to bring in different people to work with us on this. There's a lot of, you're most welcome. Let's maybe have one or two concluding things, and then we can wrap it up. Let's quickly see, there's a lot here. I want to quickly just scan back to some of the chat. Thanks for those who are still around. I know I'm messing with your wine drinking time. Let's see. I think we can, unless there's something you've picked up, Anne, we can maybe conclude it, etc.
Yeah, there was just one comment that Ashraf Patel, I don't know, Ashraf, are you still on the call? If you are, it was just about copyright issues. But he's asked, he sent me an article, which I will send out to everybody. I think it's quite relevant with ChatGPT and obviously copyright issues. Ashraf, are you on? Would you like to bring up a comment? And if not, the other person I just wanted to welcome to the call is Junaid Khan. He's from Apple. And we've started working together to just do some exploratory discussions with Apple Education. So I'm looking forward to all these kind of relationships developing and working in this AI space. I think it's really phenomenal. So welcome, Junaid, as well. Thank you for attending. And just really, Johan, from my side, without not really a comment, but I'm so delighted that so many people came on the call to listen to you. It's really exciting, and I look forward to building the network going forward. And if anyone's got any comments that they would like to bring up, you're welcome to email me or send information through. We can distribute it to this group, and we'll post it onto the website as well, the recording and your slides, Johan, if that's in order. So from my side, thank you. And I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll leave it up to you to close when you're ready, Johan. Thank you.
Okay. Happy to close. Everyone, thank you for your time. We are learning together. No one of us have all the answers. Let's collaborate. Let's think of it. Let's think of our children more than anything, or of the future of generations. And let's use technology for good, because it has such potential for good. And yeah, I think, and let's be excited about it. And with that, I would say thank you, Anne, and everyone, for this opportunity, for my 2 cents worth. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.